Hey there, Zlatko here. Welcome to What is My Brain podcast. Thanks for tuning in. I get the opportunity to chat with fellow founders and business operators about their journey and how they got to where they are now, where they are going, and how they're going to get there. I'm planning on bringing guests and touching on topics such as running multiple businesses, executing ideas, and just spitballing about random topics and current events. It's a casual conversation, and that will hopefully bring value to anyone that decides to listen. I hope you enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in.
I'm just kicking it, man. So, Clifford, all of the above, man.
All of the
Thank you
above,
for being.
depending who you are, right? Like,
Thank you for being on, man.
dude, thanks for having me. Like, that was a jarring start. Just these two beards popping up. No, good. Thank you so much for having me. When I met you and saw that you had a podcast, I was like, bro, we got a podcast. It's gonna be a good time.
Well, I felt like our first conversation was already a podcast, so I don't even. I feel like we should have just recorded that and then kind of gone from there. So I really appreciate your enthusiasm, your energy, dude. As I told you, I text you right afterwards. I said your energy is just different, and I really appreciate that, brother.
No, I love that. It's funny too because I think podcasting, even though it's like a new technology, what we get out of podcasting, we've been doing for ages, right? Like if you're at a bus stop and you're just like talking to someone, how often have you ended up talking to a stranger for just like an hour just because two people with something to say ended up in the same place with time on their hands?
Exactly, man.
You
And
know?
I think it's always interesting. I'm always a big. My girlfriend always says this to me. She's like, "You literally talk to everybody." I'm like, I talk to so many strangers, like just saying like hi and just asking questions and different things like that. So always a nice way to connect with people. And then when people are kind of reciprocal the same way back, and they're just like, "Hey, how you doing? What are you up to?" All that stuff. It's just brings such a great conversation and a different light to everything. So I really appreciate that, man.
I actually have always held kind of like the long belief, like I'm very like people centered, however you want to just like describe what that means to you. Like for
Yep,
me, I've seen that in a variety of different cases. I've seen that like as a comedian in a comedy club, what being people centered looks like is different than in a business where you're providing a service, and it's even different if you're just sitting on a bus stop, right? And like I was at a cafe the
exactly.
other day. There's a little cafe in town here where you can just you walk in and it's everything you would expect from a small town cafe. Oh, hey Cliff, how's the so and so? Everyone's got their hands up.
Yeah.
And I was meeting with a stranger, a guy I never met before, but a mutual said, "Hey, you two should connect. This guy's got an interesting story, Cliff. You might want to meet him, right?" And I was like, "Sure, whatever. I'm yes-anding the universe, right? Let's go." So I go to meet this guy. He's running a small art space. He has PTSD from a motorcycle accident. And he does like all this really interesting artistic stuff. And in the middle of this interaction, he pulls out a pile of papers like this, old, tattered papers. And I'm like, yo, what's this guy? What is this guy about to give me or whatever? I don't know what this is. And it
Yeah.
was letters from the 1940s from his grandfather to his grandmother when he was at war. Like
Whoa.
literal war letters. He started them off by saying, like, "Dear Peach Pie." Like, "Oh, Bob Hope was really on fire last night. I caught him on the telly." Literally like that kind of stuff. And this stranger is reading me the words of his grandfather to his grandmother out loud and starts reading me all these letters.
That's
And
amazing.
like
That's amazing.
I'm just saying yes to this in the middle of the black cat, right? Like, and I'm just like, there's something to me was very human about this because neither of us wanted anything from each other,
It
but
was just a
we were
connection, dude. It
just a
was just
connection,
this.
yeah.
That's
Just like,
amazing.
and I like the people that are like, I'm connecting you to. I don't know why. I just feel like y'all should be in the same room at the same time and see what happens. And I find
Um,
that really
energy's
interesting.
Energy's an amazing thing, dude. Energy's an amazing thing. And honestly, man, when you I think you commented on one of my LinkedIn posts and you posted something, and I don't know what it was. It was the way you wrote it, the way I felt your energy through that post. I was like, I need to connect with this person. I just need to get on a call and just be there with
Yeah.
him and experience just talking to him. And man, I'm so glad you did that, and I'm so glad we were able to connect. So again, man, thank you for bringing that to the table every time.
And honestly, thank you for being this like open-minded. Like I started building this business at 6 months ago, and I'm seeing all these solopreneurs like saying, "Oh, you got to meet with the community, other people that are doing what you do. You got to talk to them and all this stuff." It's not as easy as they're saying it is. You can't just like slide into someone's DMs. That's really awkward. It feels transactional. It just doesn't feel right, you know? And so like I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I do remember you responding with like, "Yo, this vibe, I like it." And I'm like,
Yeah,
I've always tried to be as authentic as possible, and it's really hard when like I was raised with a Portuguese mom, and she just was like, she has more energy than me, bro. Right? Like she was just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I'm from Canada. She's in her 60s, yeah, in her 60s, and she went to Miami this weekend with my brother to catch a Panthers game and a Dolphins game.
dude.
She's
Yes.
going. She's got like more energy than 1,000 suns, this woman. And so she bestowed it upon me. I got this Portuguese mom energy. That's what I call it. This is Portuguese mom energy. And I just don't know what to do with it. So I'm always you know, and I don't understand like the flair of online. I do get that some people are very stylized in the way they speak to each other. I just kind of write the way I talk, and I talk
Yep.
like the way I engage. And even like when I do comedy, you don't always know where the riffing starts and the jokes end and then the story starts. It's sort of all a thing. So what you're talking
Yep.
about energy, like I've almost had that fuel my authenticity, and then that fuels the relationships instead of vice versa. Where some
Exactly.
people go,
Exactly.
that person has a thing I want to be a part of or be on. I'm going to go to the relationship first. It's like, no, you got to start with yourself first.
You got to start with yourself first, and you got to and the authenticity always comes through one way or another. It's like if it's not there, it's not coming through, and you can't force it. But when it's there, it doesn't need to be forced, and it just happens, and the people can feel it right back and forth on that same minute, pretty much. And so yeah, man, I really appreciate that. So I want to quickly get into it in terms of,
Yeah.
you and I had that first conversation, and you have a very interesting sort of journey that you've been able to be on at this point. I should say, and you went through comedy for so many years, and then you sort of took this like right turn into remote work at Shopify, and then you started took another left turn because of unforeseen circumstances, and went into going into your own business and building that up. So give me a little bit of that rundown, or it doesn't need to be a little bit, it could be as long as you want it to be, of what your few years before that were, or however, maybe a decade. I think you said you've been doing this for a long time.
Longer,
um
yeah.
yeah, so take me down that journey, and how you stumbled upon comedy, and how you were able to make a living, and different things like that, and what you had to do to push that forward.
Well, it's really interesting that you're using the language left turn and right turn into like almost as if I've been going a different direction. The funny thing about this is I've always been going the same direction. So like I started stand up when I was 23 years old because I experienced a lot of life up until that point. I previously
For
was expelled.
perspective, sorry to interrupt you. For
Yeah,
perspective, may I ask how old you are now?
I'm 36 now.
Okay, so
So like yeah,
22
so
to
I've been in the
36.
stand-up
Okay.
game itself for about 13 years, right? And it really what brought me to that place was I actually initially went to school to be a part of the clergy. I went to theology. I wanted to
Wow.
be I wanted to be a youth pastor, right? And I had all these questions burning in my head, and I knew there was parts of my personality that I wanted to combine. I was like, I want to bring people together, yes. I want to do it in a way that's positive, yes, right? Like I started following these things, but then when I went to Bible college, well, even though I wasn't a comedian yet, the comedian inside me got myself expelled because I thought it'd be funny to go streaking, and they didn't. They didn't think it was as funny as I did. And they're like, you get out of here. And I got the boot. And funny enough, I talked my way back in. And that's where I met my first wife. And so, like, and we were together for 15 years after that point. So, things, that was a really unique circumstance off the hop to teach me that, like, good things happen out of bad things. Bad things can inform what you're going to do next. That can be good. So, like, I was kind of off in my assertion that religion was going to be the path for me because it was more political than I wanted to buy into.
Right.
And so for me, I found comedy. If you think about it, a stand-up comedian and a pastor are sort of the same thing, right? They're standing there, they're telling things to the people that want to hear things, except the pastor is most likely not dropping a dick joke. The comedian's most likely dropping too many. So like you got, like, it's still not a perfect balance, but you can see how A got me to B. Like, you can see
Yep.
and it was a new risk. It was a new way of exposing myself to something I didn't know, and I loved the learning environment of it. I will say this with confidence, and I'm not trying to be shady, but I do very much believe the education system I was brought up in failed the way I learned. The way I learned, that education system doesn't exist. It's not there, So I was enamored when I first saw jokes. I actually, like, the first time I ever saw it live was a friend of mine was doing it. He was like, yo, I just signed up for this open mic, and he did his, like, second open mic, and he was horrible. And I was like, oh my God, I could do that. Like, if he can do that, I can do that. What are you on about, right? But another part of me was like, I was looking at everything. I was like, holy shit. Like, the immediacy of the feedback system. Like, the crowd will tell you if it's funny or if it's not funny. And the amount of tightropes you have to walk at one time, it just felt like emotionally intelligent education that I would not have received any other way had I said yes to the risk of doing comedy. Right? I'm risking saying the wrong thing, offending people. I could have something recorded that could land me getting fired in the future. Right? There was a lot at risk, just the very act of doing comedy. But that was also, for me, like, that the comedy club is supposed to be a safe place to be unsafe in, a comfortable place to be uncomfortable in. Like, it's sacred ground in that regard, And so I was looking for a way to fuel my comedy career. And I was like, oh, people can work remotely now. So I've actually, that's why I'm saying it wasn't left or right. It was, oh, if I get this job at Shopify, I can take a day job on the road with me. That's cool. All right, because I was working in group homes. I was wiping butts and taking punches. Right?
Wow.
Like, I did that for 8 years. When we talk about paying dues, your bro is paying his dues. Like, I'm literally like, yo, I've wiped an ass. I've done my shit. I know. And and I know what it's like to not only wipe an ass, get punched in the face, but then have to go perform in front of 2,000 people and then bomb because I got punched in the face that day while trying to wipe an ass. And now I know what 2,000 people sound like silent. Suddenly I've grown some hairs on my chest that day, like,
yeah.
Because that is the truth of the comedian experience, is all comedians navigate this while having a job, while having a day job. Like, most of them don't come from a place of privilege. So most of them just find a mic and figure it out and have their hustles and blah, blah, blah. I was looking for some stability with a kid. So I was like, I got a kid. I need a day job. One I'll take on the road with me, because I'm not saying goodbye to comedy. No matter what obstacles in my way, I'm going to figure out a different way. But what I couldn't have predicted was a pandemic happening, and that I got a pandemic-proof job before the pandemic happened. So I had this weird thing where all of a sudden I watched comedy go away. It disappeared, man. Like, it just, people are doing Zoom shows and stuff, but it was uncomfortable. I was just experiencing what it's like to do comedy in the metaverse, and that's way more like a real show. Like, you could see the audience in front of you. You can actually grab a mic even though I end up smashing my cup in front of me or whatever, I
Right.
can still do it, right? And so I'm at Shopify. I'm going to not be negative about this, not be negative about that I just lost comedy and things aren't going the way that I want them to. And I'm going to use my experience at Shopify to learn as much as I can. And
Yep.
so, like, anytime, like Toby Luque, he's the CEO of Shopify. I think he's absolutely a brilliant person. I think he's a really interesting systems thinker. And I think he's a really important person to pay attention to in terms of how to think about technology. And I listened to everything this guy had to say because he thinks entirely 100% differently than I do.
Yep.
If you put us in the same room, I don't even know if we could hold a conversation with each other. We're that different of human beings, like, but
Something tells me that you'd be able to find some common ground with anybody, my man.
well, I would start off like, did you know I got fired? Where were you in that choice? He had nothing to do with it. But like, I'm putting the cart before the horse. We'll get there. But like, while at Shopify, I was learning everything from him and anything that was internal podcasts, internal documentation. If you are working for a company and you are working for builders, and especially a founder company, right, where the person's seen the entire story from beginning to now, like, pay attention. That person has more trial and error experience than you have, and that you will most likely have in this area. So, like, I was just like, I went back into student mode. I wanted to learn everything I could. And so even though I started in the mailroom in a support role, I was like, no, I'm going to try this jungle gym. I'm going to try to apply for jobs that typically people with bachelor's and master's degrees would get. I'm going to try to go for these positions. And I started jumping in the jungle gym. I went through 9 straight internal rejections. I was trying so hard to be someone I wasn't. Like, we were just talking about authenticity. I'm showing up as me right now. You see that. But like,
Yep.
imagine if I showed up in a tie and a collared shirt right now, looking the way I do. And like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't really buy it, and neither did those interviewers, right? Like, I was coming in trying to be these educated people, these middle class people, these people that I've never had any contact with. I was trying to be them. But it wasn't a good recipe because I had a lot to offer as myself. I actually had more to offer as me than I would have being in that same bracket. And so the moment I was myself, and I actually, like, I'll tell you the joke I told. I told a joke, and you always gotta be careful telling jokes in interviews.
Yeah.
But
I love this.
they were asking me about a time I had to deal with someone who was very difficult. And I told them a story about the first time I got screamed at on a support call. And I was like, it doesn't happen often. Most merchants are super cool and just want to build their businesses. But every once in a while, you get someone that's had a bad day, you know? And this guy's
Yeah.
name happened to be Adolf. So
Okay.
I go to the interviewer. So here I am getting yelled at by the Duran Duran of Hitlers. And I drop that joke, right? Like, I'm doing this casually, and I just drop the Duran Duran of Hitlers. I just threw it in there. They crack up. That's the job I get.
I love it.
That's the first interview. I make a Hitler joke, like, especially like looking at all the Kanye shit happening in the media. It's like, I was stepping on some like territory that you should not ever really in a professional environment. But because my intention was clear that I was not being malicious and that I was using it as a flowery way to tell a story and to tell it the way I would tell any coworker. I would make that joke to you if we were co-working at each other. So I gave you
Yep.
an idea of who you'd be working with, a guy that might casually drop a somewhat safe Hitler joke.
Bringing
Right? Like,
culture to the table, man. You're bringing culture to the table.
well, I'm also, for me, I was like, the whole idea of being comfortable with the uncomfortable. I would always go, hi, I'm uncomfortable. Like, I'm Mr. Uncomfortable. But even in stand-up, I used to be able to get away with things just with my demeanor that other comics
Mm-hmm.
that looked really prim and proper wouldn't be able to get the same kind of buy-in just socially. Right. And so like these are things that I learned through stand-up of how to ingratiate someone to a more unpopular view or something like that. Like people talk about cancel culture, people talk about words you can and cannot say, and I just see education that hasn't been taught yet. I just see, well,
Right.
we haven't learned how to have these conversations, or we haven't learned how to use these words, or how to eliminate words without feeling like it's a threat on your free speech. Right? Like
Right.
there's a ton of words we don't say anymore. Right?
Yeah.
Like even like trolley. When do you have to say trolley? Right? We don't
Right.
take the trolley, we take the bus. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like we eliminate words all the time. But humans have a psychological learning curve, and the truth is that curve, all of us are on different points. Right? And so like you might be here, I might be here, blah blah blah, and we've seen divisions of, oh, everyone on this point, they've only gone to school and they're above, and everyone at this point hasn't gone to school and they're below. But then you get a company like Shopify that amalgamates both of us. You have people with master's degrees talking to people who maybe their highest education was being a barista at Starbucks.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
Yep.
But that doesn't mean that being a barista at Starbucks wasn't an education. You know what I mean? In fact, a lot of the support at Shopify were people that used to be at Starbucks because of the customer service education on how to speak with people. So
Mm-hmm.
after the Hitler interview, even saying it like that so bad, but like, come on, you can see my intentions not to hurt.
Yeah, of
And
course. Of course.
so I was like, okay, I'm going to keep going for things, right? I got this interview, but it landed me in such a cushy position that I was like, why did I go through 9 interview failures for day camp? Like, is this what I strove for? Like, I was like, no, I wanted to be a part of a challenge. And that's when I learned about Shopify's fulfillment network, right? The startup within their company that they were building to compete with Amazon. And that I was like, I know nothing about fulfillment. I know nothing about the supply chain. I'm going for it. Right? Like, because now my curiosity and my grit is getting really like practiced. You know, like I kept getting back up after every rejection, which is very similar to comedy. You bomb all the time. That's how you learn, and you learn in 5-minute increments. Right? So like I just started looking at interviewing as bombing, and I started looking at learning as like, oh yeah, we're gonna go bomb tonight. I'm gonna go fucking fail at this thing and not know how to do it and flop, and then I'll learn, and then I'll know, and then I'll change. Right? Like I started seeing the process in which learning happens, and not thinking that it was like
And that
things I
made it
didn't
easier
know.
for you because you're already accustomed to that process through comedy. That you were like, this is
Exactly.
just the same structure, just in a different type of environment.
I just had to get rid of the social paradigms that was not accessible for me. I just had to
Right.
remove that which I have been abiding by within my life, but now I wasn't. Now I was telling people with bachelor degrees and masters that I could be in the same meeting with them and have something to offer.
Yep.
Right? Like really weird educational bridging, you know, but it
Mm-hmm.
really important. And something that like comedy has always done. You have all those people in the same room and you got to get them laughing at the same joke, right? The Starbucks
Exactly.
barista and the developer with their masters, right? Like you got to hit both people because they're both humans. How do you connect them? So the things that connect us aren't intellectual, right?
Yep.
It's beyond that. Connections beyond that. So then I got 4 promotions in 8 months. So
And
I
this
went
was
on
in 2020 or 2021?
the promotions was 2021 to 2022. So
Okay.
kind of going, no, it was all 2021 was the promotions. So
Okay.
because my last position I got September of 2021, and then I was part of a layoff on May 4th, Star Wars Day.
Okay.
Right?
Star
May the
Wars Day.
4th.
I love it.
Oh yeah, I was like, may the 4th be with you. May the 4th go fuck itself. I'm emotional. Like, there's so much humor to be had that day because like I'm gonna skip some of the nitty gritty because we don't need those parts. But like, what I will say about that experience is where I landed was I was creating learning materials for all the logistics teams, for sales, for marketing, for support. I was creating onboarding programs. None of the shit I've ever done, any of it. And I was doing it, and it was awesome. And I just happened to be part of that first wave of layoffs, and now I think we're on like wave 7 or something, right? Like,
Oh man.
not to laugh about it, but we do. And if anyone watches this that has been through a layoff, I want to just remind the adage of comedy, like time plus tragedy equals comedy, right? Like this is
Mm-hmm.
something I've lived by my whole life. And when I was let go, I immediately was able to see the comedy in it because I've kind of ingratiated myself to this belief, right? Like, so I've always sort of like said that, and I saw that it was really funny. I never thought about it, how being fired when you work from home would look like. That, hey, I might be in my underwear when I get fired, right?
Right.
Like, which I'm not going to confirm nor deny, but I was in my underwear when I got fired. Classic jokes there, but like, so you don't experience that. You don't experience the computer shutting down around you, like the Matrix, and you're just like, what the fuck is happening? Like all these things, right? It's what empowered me to be like, oh man, take this with stride, take everything you learned, be grateful for it, and just go announce your company, bro. You've been thinking about this for months, right? People
Mm-hmm.
talk about quiet quitting. I wonder if I had an air of that, right? Like, I wonder, because I almost feel like my mind was already in the business.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I was able to announce it, because I've already been thinking about it. I've already been thinking about why I believe people need it. So I was like, and it was that bridge between comedy and education that I don't think we can figure it out quite yet, because we haven't figured out how to accept someone making a mistake. Like something as simple as
Exactly.
that, right? Which in improv, the rule is there are no mistakes when you're in that learning process, right? And that's what I'm saying. It's like a learning environment and stuff, right? And I actually made the person who was firing me, I made her laugh, because I said to her, I was like, listen, I don't want to ruffle too many feathers here. I get your decisions made, okay? But I've been at this company for 3 years. You know how much I love Survivor. You couldn't have written my name on a piece of paper and voted me out properly? Do you know how much it would have made my fucking day if you just voted me out of this company? Like, I get it. Like it's awkward, but that would have just warmed my heart. That would have been a way to send me out with love.
Right.
You're right?
Exactly. Like brought the whole loop around, all the way around.
Like, I know that's such a weird concept. How do you respect someone on the way out, right? We've seen in Moneyball the way Brad Pitt explains it. He's like, you sit him down.
Right.
All right, we've got your stuff signed up. You're going to this place, right? You're going to Cleveland.
Yep.
Peace out. That's it. Goodbye. Right? Cut him out, because at the moment you're let go, it goes from you were a person, you're a number. That's just the transition. And you have to understand that it comes to it comes to addition and subtraction, right? You were there when things were getting added, and then when subtractions happened, you were a part of that subtraction.
Yep.
And so everything I learned from comedy that just taught me about getting back up, about why we bomb, about why we explore uncomfortable things, and why we push boundaries, I was really like, no, there's got to be a company around this. There's got to be a business that is like, hey, we're okay being the third party outliers, because it's not part of an official structure, right? Getting something built into a learning curriculum, like everything I'm talking about, like the idea of like just making things more uncomfortable for a learning environment, we should be doing that in classrooms. Like I think like it's archaic to think that all the desks should be facing the same way, and then when the bell rings, you go to this. It's like a factory farming model.
Exactly. I 100% agree with that. And I was never
Yeah.
so for me, I've never been part of that that school system. I actually ended up dropping out and all these other things, but like that to
Interesting.
me, the structure of things has always dawned on me in terms of like why does it, like, everyone learn. I'm a visual learner. I know a lot of people who can read a book for 2 hours and get all the information that they need. That's not me. Like I never did for middle school, high school, college. Not once did I study for absolutely anything. Not read one book, never, like never did any of that. I passed. I didn't get A's. I didn't get, but I passed. I got out. But college, I ended up just being, because that's when, you're an adult technically. I just ended up saying, you know what, this is just not for me, and I went a completely different way. So I completely agree with the structure is not for everybody, and I think there is, and I don't know if you follow somebody like Gary Vee. He speaks on this a lot now about education and how he feels that like the best thing that parents can do right now is to let kids decide what they want to do rather than like push them to go to college and these different things, because
Yes,
all
I
the
agree with that.
resources and all the information that people need in order to survive and make a living and prosper is, it's all in front of us completely for free. Like you can get a whole education on like YouTube now if you really sit down and say, hey, I'm going to spend X amount of hours doing this, actually putting it to work, having a whiteboard, drawing things, like doing it in the way that it fits you, the way that you feel like you
Yeah.
can learn. I think we would be miles ahead than where we are right now.
Well, absolutely. It's resourcefulness, right? We haven't taught
Yeah,
resourcefulness, so we haven't taught, like, I have friends that don't think to go to YouTube and learn that thing. Like
exactly.
I was faced with an interesting problem while building this business. I had a development thing I need to do. I'm still in the middle of doing it, and I was quoted at $4,000 for to do it. And then I
Yeah,
asked myself, do I want to spend $4,000 or do I want to spend 40 hours and to learn it? I'll give myself like a full work week, see how much I learn from it. Right? Like
hmm,
literally, because when you're an entrepreneur, you can do that. You can actually decide
yep,
how you learn and when you learn. And sometimes I do have to go into university mode and deep 2 weeks learn a new thing, right? And
yep.
so I was like, I'm just gonna learn it. And now I've been doing it more broken up, but like I've been just like literally it's taking me longer, but I'm now learning how to make a web flow on a landing page, which I've never knew before. And I'm
It's
teaching
amazing,
myself
dude.
that,
It's
right?
amazing. It's amazing.
Well, and just to go back on your point, like, okay, you're familiar with the enneagrams, like the personality testing.
Yeah, I did the what is it, 36 personality or whatever the
Okay,
what
so
yeah,
sort of similar to
I forget.
that. So the enneagrams, I think they're split into about 8 or something like that.
Okay.
A lot of companies now are using that as their main personality measure because it's pretty good. You can usually go, oh, you're a 7, you're a 4, like, you can
Yep.
kind of get
Yep.
it. I like coming from group homes and coming from comedy, I can tell you I don't have to be a behavioral psychologist to tell you that environment plays a huge part in psychology. I don't need to go
100%.
to a university to tell you that. I could tell you that in the comedy room because you see the difference in a well-run club like Absolute Comedy. I'm gonna give them a shout out. Very well-run club in Canada, right? And you go from there to some bar with pool tables at the back and people not there for comedy and like loud dishes clanging. You see the difference in the environment, how it impacts comedy. Let's go to group homes, right? Like someone with no furniture to someone with a room that feels like a home. They're going to
Yep.
have different results, right? So we take these idea of enneagrams. What if a classroom had a physical environment built for enneagrams, built for personality types, right? A big circle in the middle of the room for collaborator types, but then like maybe a tented off area with a more individual, isolated for reading and comfort for that kind of stuff. Like, and like then when people grew up in the education system, they're like, "Oh, you were probably a 2 when you were in kindergarten, right?" Yeah, but I became much more of a 4 in about grade 5, right? And
Yep.
like all of a sudden, just by changing physical environments, right? oh, we can actually get more out of the individual learner because we're not trying to blanket solve this, right? Like,
Exactly.
oh, this education's for everyone. We're all learning arithmetic. Here's the thing. I see a reason to learn arithmetic. Clifford doesn't need to learn it, and not right now. So
Exactly.
Clifford needs to go learn something else. Actually, you should be putting Clifford towards leadership things and teaching him those things and let him lead activities and that kind of stuff. That's how
Hmm.
you teach the Clifford, right?
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly. It's kind of it falls into the same thing that's happening. I mean, even in business, or even and I hate politics and government and all that bullshit. In all honesty, I'm so like away from that world. But it's
yeah.
the same thing that happened with this whole like vaccine thing, right? Like going in and saying everybody needs to get the vaccine. And it's like, no, dude, there's a lot of people who are healthy out here that are taking care of themselves and that don't need it. Their body's gonna be just fine. Yes, there's some people who may need it. Like you cannot, what you said earlier, like about the blanket statement. The blanket statement, it literally, like, you cannot do it for almost anything. Like you cannot just throw a blanket and say this solves everyone's problems right now. No, it doesn't, dude. Like it never will.
It's a band-aid solution, and not only is it a band-aid
Exactly.
solution, band-aids don't really work that well for really big cuts, right? Like, you're not
Exactly.
going to put a
Exactly.
band-aid on a gash. And we
Exactly.
have a lot of, like, the pandemic, what you're saying, that was a gash, right? Like, that wasn't a
Yeah.
little cut. That was a swoo. You're getting axed in the face with that one. And I want to lean into this a little bit, dude, because talking about the pandemic, talking about the vaccines is uncomfortable for people. So we do need to talk about how do we have conversations about it, right? And so I look at I'm sorry, I'm trying to fix this little thing in my ear. I'm like, I'm not fixing that. But like,
I like it.
um, it look a little alfalfa sticking up. But like, okay, so I think what you're saying is correct in terms of you have a blanket solution, right? Like, you have a thing to put into a body to protect from a thing, but you have 80-year-old fat bodies, 30-year-old fit bodies, and you're saying this one thing connects to both, right? You can't say that like the circle is meant to fit in the triangle and the square. It just doesn't work in people's minds. And what happens? We get divided over how we have an opinion on this thing, and then it
Exactly.
actually divides us. And
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
I want to go back to when I mentioned that onboarding program that I built, right? I didn't build that alone. I built that with one other person. He was an anti vaxxer, a very strongly opinionated anti vaxxer. I got vaxxed twice because I wanted to do jokes and I couldn't do them live unless I was vaxxed. I looked at it. We weighed our options completely differently. I weighed it
Exactly.
as I put Taco Bell in my face for breakfast. I do horrible things for my health constantly. This is yet another risk, but this risk lets me tell jokes.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
where but then he was like feeling really isolated. He couldn't talk about why he was so angry or why he was so upset. So in our conversations and in our building, not only did we talk about this and really connect and become really good friends, we built an incredible onboarding experience and we did it together. An anti-vaxxer and a vaxxer. What? They worked together as humans and did a cool thing, right?
Yep.
I understand that there was forces that were telling us to be divided, that were telling us that like we're on opposite sides of the fence. I didn't see that at all. I saw that as we were two people that had different reasons for why we were
Exactly.
reacting to a thing. You know what I mean? And
Exactly.
that was personal. And yeah, he taught me a lot just working with him. Just of if you're always trying to be right, you're never going to connect to the person you're with. You
No, you
know,
won't.
like,
And what is and honestly, I thought about this a lot. This happened to me around 2015. What's really the point of being right? Like, what is the point of being right? There's no right. Like, it's completely irrelevant if you're right or wrong. It's just all a learning process.
I think of it like people that get a special pass that lets them go in front of the line. Right? Like they're like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
which is
I'm right. I'm
bullshit.
allowed." Exactly, right? But it's like, "I'm right. I'm allowed to do this. I'm right." Blah blah blah. Do I think? I don't think a lot of things are right. Actually, I think most things are wrong. Right? And like
Yeah,
a lot of these people that are like right, you know, are going for a certain thing, right? Like, oh, I want to have a comfortable house. And I want it to be like this, and I want my kid to go to this kind
it's
of
an ego
school.
stroke, dude. It's an ego stroke.
Well, it gives you a sense of safety, right? Because you're in the front of the line. People in the back of the line might not get to go on the ride, right? And so, like, it does give you a sense of position, status, right? Front of the line status as opposed to back of the line status. I look at it as like if you get so caught up in being right all the time, you're never going to see the beauty in being wrong.
Exactly. You'll never
Like there's
learn because you're gonna always
but
feel like you have all the answers.
but there's true beauty in the mistakes we make. That's why in improv we say there's no mistakes, because like you really are giving yourself to the moment and just going, we are making the choice to accept each other right now, which is not something people consciously do and say. We don't enter
Exactly.
meetings and go, we're all going to accept each other no matter what comes out of mouths in this meeting.
Right.
No,
Right.
no, we play a little game where we dance with our words, where we say things without saying them. Maybe we have a statement, but we say it in the form of a question,
Yep.
right? But like humans are very smart in how we can go in between the lines. So that's actually why I think stand up, comedy, improv can actually teach all the in between the line education, because it exposes you to being uncomfortable, and then we can actually get into all those little things. The more everyone in the room understands body language, the more conscientious everyone in the room is of their body language.
Exactly.
Like that. It almost sounds like what I'm talking about is too simple, and that's like I've actually had that criticism where it's like you're not talking about a brand new technology. You're not talking about something that requires super smart math brain, right? You're literally saying people have to get together, play, and accept each other, and I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's 100% what I'm saying.
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
that's literally how people that build these new technologies, they actually build it that way. They learn how to play with each other, they learn how to disagree, and they learn how to accept, right? Like this is how things happen. And we have to go back to who we were primally.
Yep.
How do we learn? Right? We watched them fish, and then we fished, right? We watched them make fire, and then we made fire. Are you telling me that those conversations with cavemen were, hey, be real serious here, fish, right? You're telling me there was no laughs, there was no
Yeah.
like rumbling around. No, what are you doing with these sticks? Now get over here. Right? What are you talking about? And why did we take the fun out of education? Why did we take that human part of us that retains more information when we're having a good time? Why did we take that away from the way we learn? Why is it
Exactly.
kindergartners play with toys, but college kids don't? What
Yeah.
the fuck?
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly, dude. No, that's dead on, and that's exactly. I share those same exact sentiments, man. And I think it's things will need to change, and I think a lot of people will call for that change, especially with all the resources online and everything now, where they can do things on their own in their own way. So, but I want to kind of jump into like what in terms of your business and everything that you're building. Talk a little bit more about that and what you're where you're at right now and where you're hoping to take this thing, because I know last time we talked you had some definite like milestones and different things that you're looking
Yeah.
to hit and launch things and all that stuff, so I'd love to hear a little bit more about that and get that out there.
Well, this is such a great time to have this conversation because we are on the eve of a milestone. So
Yeah.
just to give a super quick recap of like where we were and where we are now. It
Okay.
started when I was starting this. This is what was in my head. I know I'm going to do something with comedy and education. I don't know what that looks like. I'll probably have to start off doing live events. So I'm going to do what I know and kind of kick off a bar brand, an event bar brand, and just go from there. I just knew I needed to make the thing. I didn't know what it was going to be yet. And then I started experimenting. I started doing some live stuff, started talking to people, reaching out to, like, I would read something on the internet and then reach out to the person who wrote that, right? Anything that was like resonating with what I was trying to build. And then I quickly went from, oh, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, to I 100% know what I'm doing. So like, and what it was I had an event partner, and they weren't promoting the live events. This is something that anyone that's put on a show or anything like that will tell you that's common with venues. And if all the promotion's on you, it's a lot of sweat equity for very little return.
Yeah.
And so then I was like, okay, any events I do are going to be purely private. I can make that choice now. But then I was like, no, I'm going all in on the workshops. I'm going all in on the education piece. So even though it's called the Other Comedy Company, we're a learning and development company. That's 100% what we are, right? But we create workshops that gamify improv games, right? So we
Okay.
take these improv games and we attach them to deeper learning. So tomorrow, why I say we're on the eve of a milestone, is I'm filming my demo tomorrow. I've done some
Oh, nice.
R&D, experimentation in my living room with friends, all that kind of stuff. And now I actually have a group of 8 salespeople from an actual company, right?
Wow.
And we're going to an innovation center. I got a filmmaker from Toronto. He's an old friend. I met him in the woods, and we are we are just doing this thing, right? We got 4 cameras. We're going to create the demo. We're going to show what the experience is. And what this experience is it's very prescriptive. So when I tell people, yeah, to make sense of it, corporate training through comedy, they think, oh, team building. They're going to do comedy. It's going to bring us together. And it's like, no, 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 no. We're actually going to look at what your goals are as a team. And we're going to create games that go to the deeper concepts you need for your team. So I can use this demo as an example. Tomorrow, I have a sales team that they make a commission. They share commission. So the top salesperson and the lowest salesperson will make the same payout, right?
Okay.
So, like, what are the core concepts that you really need to like teach a team? Like, well, we need to learn how to work in unison, right? Like, really be like, how do you connect that? Now, there's a form of game in improvs called group mind. So we'll be doing some
Okay.
group mind games that get everyone into that state. But then we need to get into the conversation of personal responsibility, right? Like, how do you take personal responsibility if someone else is slacking, but you take 100% ownership over your spot? So then we have games that literally have us shifting weight to one another, right? Like
Wow.
that kind of thing. Yeah, we're taking traditional improv games, smashing it up, Frankensteining them, and connecting them to deeper learning. And that's our entire R&D, is doing that, right? And it's completely like, so each team that comes with us, we're taking a bunch of time to curate the entire experience. So it's like 2 hours entirely devoted to their goals, but disguised as comedy.
I
You
love it. I
know,
love it. And how many of these do you do per team, for example?
well, so I have 5 so each package, you can do a package for support, which includes customer support or product support, right? I
Okay.
understand that the idea of what you like, I kind of say everything comes to product support, even customer support, right? Like, but like in my mind, product teams are often neglected and are typically the linchpin,
Okay.
right? And so like they're the teams that are like, hey, we need this right now. Okay, here you go. Here you go. Here you go. Ah, but there's 19 bugs of this thing that you delivered 4 weeks ago, right? That
Yeah.
shit, those teams, right? That they fall into that support category for us. And then we have sales, because obviously you need someone to sell the product, and then lead, right? You need your leadership team to be a little bit more involved. So what these comedy games, they might be really fun at the sales level, but they might be really challenging at the lead level. Where it's
Hmm.
like we actually like, let's look at it. a lead team that had to lay off 10% of their company, right? How do we reverse engineer mistakes? Would that even be applicable to what your situation was? And like, okay, what kind of games will we need for that? That's where we start getting like smashing it up. But no matter what package it is, you get a choice of one of 5 streams that are like where we'll gear it towards what that stream is. So tomorrow they're doing the energy stream. They're a bit of a newer team, so they really just want to get physically moving, get like that team building really being prevalent. And this is like the first pepper if you're looking thinking of it like hot sauces. This is the
Yeah.
mildest one, right? You go to the energy stream.
Yeah.
It's just fun. It's just you should sweat a little. We should be a little sweaty after tomorrow, and but then it goes up, right? So it goes what's the one I just said? Sorry. Energy. There we go. Energy, creativity, curiosity, confidence, trust. Trust is the hottest peppers. And that
Right.
is not just for teams building trust, but teams that just lost trust with each other for whatever reason that need to rebuild trust, right? Teams that are like literally need to rebuild with each other. We got games for that, but they're very uncomfortable, right? But it goes into like us embracing that uncomfortability and being like, yeah, what does go into rebuilding trust and building games around that? So that way, like, honestly, everything I'm saying, I could write down. I could write down
Right.
how to rebuild trust, but you're going to remember it and you're going to retain it differently when it's in play, when you're actually forced in the same biological system that like a comedian is put in when they're on stage, right? So you're immediately going to have your feedback systems going. Your fight and flight
Yeah.
is going to be going, right? We actually need you in that state to really soak in this education. And so that's I would almost say that's why we haven't seen it brought to a science at this point, is because the way we learn about trust is very 2D. And you know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's we have to go deeper. We have to go
Right.
3D. We have to go a little deeper. So, yeah, I know that's a long-winded answer, and everyone is going to be like, "You got to sum up your business quicker than that, bro." But this is where we are. We are in this learning stage. I'll figure out how to condense talking about the business. I'm sure I'll learn it as I go.
Yeah.
But tomorrow we got a demo, and then I'm able to actually go to the people that want this product that go, I want it, but what does it look like? I now can answer that question,
There
right?
you
And
go. There you go.
and just to go back to Toby from Shopify, he always says the most important thing is the most important thing.
Right.
He always says that. And this demo is my most important thing. If I can't show a customer what this looks like, this will never happen. And everything that I want to accomplish with this company won't happen if I don't do this demo.
Right.
It's the most important
Right.
thing, right?
I love it. I love it. And let me ask you really quickly. So when you guys start expanding this to, multiple teams and multiple companies and, getting this really the cycle going and all that stuff, are you building a pretty large team to like put this into play at different companies, or how are you approaching, like, I guess the real word here would be, I don't want to say scaling, but scaling.
No, absolutely. I have to. So, like, complete transparency. Like, it's me and freelance partners to a degree, right? Like people that can pop in when they can and that kind of thing,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's been a lot of like, yeah, people I've worked with before just kind of hopping in and help me out with one thing or another or that kind of thing. But the way the team will form, it'll be a core team that will kind of just like a leadership team. And then everything else is actually going to be partner ecosystem. Our entire facilitation pool is going to be
Okay.
entirely a partner ecosystem, and we're going to have tools that we can actually just dispatch, right? So anyone
Okay.
that comes into our partner ecosystem, you're very familiar with the Shopify partner ecosystem, right? Like same
Yep.
sort of thing. You opt in, you become a partner, you get to get work doing this kind of thing. And like, yeah, so then like a session, most of these will actually be virtual because there's still a lot of teams that want to do these virtually. So those we can all dispatch out, right?
Yep.
Anything that's hybrid or in person will require more in-depth system building, and like most likely community partners in those areas. So like, but one of the leads, like in that lead exec team, will be responsible for all of that, right? They'll be responsible for like, okay, we're just going to focus on Ontario right now, and then because right now we're just getting interest from Ontario and BC. So
Okay.
those are like the two areas I'm getting the most interest in. Those are the two areas I'm focusing in on the moment, because those are the two areas I have people on the ground. Like I have
How, and
physical
is that how
people.
you're getting the word out? Is like people just going out and like sharing this information with companies?
Yeah, I've also paid people on Kijiji to sit in my living room and cold call for a day.
Okay.
Like I've
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
literally
yeah.
I've been trying to I've done all those things to try to figure it out, and something I can't talk about publicly at yet, but the next important thing after this
Yeah.
important thing is I have a brand partnership that's really spot on aligned with what I'm trying to build. I fill a gap. I fill a big gap for them. They fill a big gap for me. And they come with a certain set of resources that I just don't have access to. Certain amount of tools
Right.
that I don't have access to. A publicist, for example, right? Like there's just things I don't have access to that they do. And they're able to use those resources to help elevate this relationship, right? And like they're able to come in and be like, because they do a lot of cool things, but they don't do training, and they don't do training the way I do training.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
they want in on it. I want in on what they're up to, because I think it's absolutely amazing. And we're both mission focused, right? We're both coming, our mission's the same mission, actually. Like we're trying to create an independent Canadian comedy market, right? Which doesn't, like, you have to remember, like, even though my customer is innovation teams, right? Teams at companies that are innovating, that are doing new things, right? Those are specifically the people that we focused on, right? Any team that
Yeah.
involved in an innovation product. And even though those are like who we're doing it for, you have to remember all these facilitators. Let's say like, you're talking about scale. I get 100 workshops booked in a week, right? That's 100 comedians I get to be comedy Uber and send them out to these gigs, right? And get to send them out to doing them. And for us, I'm like, not only am I working comedians off stage, I am giving them more than they would typically make, like doing a week at a club, right? And like, or just indie shows and stuff like that. And now they can reinvest that money into their own careers, because I do believe stand-ups need to continue being as independent as humanly possible, because that really is the secret sauce to stand-up comedy. It must be independent. When you're independent, you do what Rogan did and you build a large empire, and then you get other independents building. If you don't go
Uh
independent,
huh.
you do what Stephen Colbert did, and then you sell out your comedic identity for a new comedic identity that's aligned with
Right.
corporate interest.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like
Right. Exactly.
Stephen Colbert doesn't get to say everything he wants to say the way he wants to say it. He doesn't get to, because that's not the game that he's playing,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. But Joe Rogan does because he's built it on his own terms.
Now, would Stephen Colbert want to be like a Joe Rogan type? Not necessarily. Different
Right.
strokes
Right.
for different folks, right? But we are seeing an increase of people wanting to work independently. And with comedians, that really doesn't change. You will have some
Yeah.
comedians that are like, yeah, CBC, give me something. Yeah, JFL, give me something, right? Like, I remember a conversation years ago I had with a Canadian comic. Their only goal was to get on JFL and to get on to some of the Canadian programs here. And they were like really jet set on it. Like, oh, I think JFL will like this joke and blah, blah, blah. And I never made comedy. Oh, I really think this person will like this joke. It was always like, I think this is funny. This will
Yeah.
get, that's always been what it has been. Like, what do I think is funny? And I remember looking at it being like, oh, I'm never getting on JFL. Like that was the thought that came in
Right.
my head, because I was like, oh,
Right.
I'm never gonna do this if this is what it takes, right?
Right.
And
Right.
like
Right.
I was never gonna think that way. Of course not. I'm just not built like that, right? So I know that there's some people that are built that way. Now, here's my question. Would she have had the same conversation with me had all the same options been available that are available now?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
If I were to catch up with them, I keep messing up with the genders, and I apologize. I'm trying to like keep it like elusive,
It's
but
okay. It's all good,
you know,
dude. It's all good.
yeah, I make mistakes,
Yeah.
but yes, no, that's what I'm talking about. Like, I'm like one of those people that's like, whenever someone makes a mistake, I'm like, yeah, that's a mistake. Oh, that's a big mistake. Like, right? This is like when I look
It's a
at Kanye,
mistake.
I'm like, oh no. But like all mistakes you can learn from, right? And so like even that, right? But
Absolutely.
just going back to the point about that conversation, with those independent tools, had the education been there of resourcefulness over I call it hand waving. Like, in like when we're in school, the hand raisers in class. Oh, I know, teacher.
Yeah.
I know. So that
Yeah.
taught people to grow up to be hand raisers. And, and this person was like hand waving, right? Like, teacher, I
Yeah.
know. And then that institution would be like, you're a good student. You get 5 minutes on our program. Thank you for the
Yep.
shiny apple. Right.
Yep.
And I think if resourcefulness is taught to comedians, and this is why I'm going to open source every single thing I've done. Everything I'm
Yep.
doing, everything the partners are doing, they're down for this. We're going to get with the Canadian Association of Stand-Up Comics. We're open sourcing all this education. So every Canadian comic, if you want to start a comedy business, if you want to be a comedian and be entrepreneurial, you can. And if you
You
want to
can.
be a one-person business, a solopreneur, you can. Right? You can do this. You can. You don't have to go through these bodies. And what I think will happen, this is not, I don't want to be one of those people. Please don't mistake me for going, oh, I'm creating a thing that will get rid of all the old dogs. I'm not trying to do that
Right.
in the least. Not in the least.
Yeah.
I believe the old dogs are the way they are by necessity. Right? And
Exactly.
when I look at Canada, we don't have an independent market because our land size to population ratio is so vastly different. And you live in California, you have more of a population than Canada.
Right.
Okay, let's
Right.
put it into perspective. So when you put it like that, of course people are going to monopolize by necessity. Of course, there's going to be one Just for Laughs and one Yuck Yucks and one Bell Media, right? Like, so you got that's the streaming, the live, and the festival circuit, right? And the televised.
Yep.
Yes, but that doesn't mean that there's not other comedy festivals. That doesn't mean that there's other comedy streaming options. That doesn't mean that there's not other independent clubs. It just means that they're significantly smaller with way less resources, way less wiggle room to build to that scale, right? So what I look
Absolutely.
at it is we're looking at an education problem here, right? If we open up the way everyone learns independently throughout Canada, we can just start working. Like you and me, we're just on we're on this app talking to each other, and we're in different countries. So
Yep.
why can't I do this with people in my own country and create this stream? And what I think will happen is I think all the old dogs will actually embrace it. We'll find more creative ways to partner. We'll change their models up slightly, and they'll do the things that they have to do as large corporations. But they're large corporations because they've faced adapt or die many times before, and they're
Yeah.
still here, right? So like I come from a punk background. I'm the first person to say fuck authority. I'm the first person to say tear down the wall. I'm the first
I
person to
love it.
say that, right? But I'm also, as someone building a business, as someone being open up to the nuances of it, I understand that there's room for both. I just think sometimes we can't picture it, right?
Right.
Like we can't see the whole picture. We can't connect everything. Sorry, I know I talk a lot. And I apologize if I'm going the wrong way. But can I touch on that point for a second? Go a little
No.
deeper into
Keep
it.
going. Keep going, man. Keep going.
Well, just talking about the different points, how like we don't always see the whole picture. There's like a riddle, the utility exercise riddle, where you have 3 houses and you have to connect it to 3 utilities, and all 3 houses have to connect to all 3 utilities, and you do this on 2D paper, right? You're drawing the lines, and it never connects. There's always one line out, right? So when you're
Okay.
looking at things in that 2D perspective, there's never a way to connect it, right? But then if you made it 3D, right? If you made it as a tube with a hole in the middle, one of those lines goes around the tube through the hole and connects, right?
Okay.
So you had to look at it differently. You had to change the rules to connect them. If you're just trying to connect it at a 2D level, it's never going to happen. You're not going to do it,
Right.
right? You have to break the rules. And the thing is we are taught these 2D systems, like bureaucracy is a 2D system. I see that as a 2D system because it's never trying to connect all the lines. They're like, we have enough lines connected, but we call it red tape, right? We've seen how it gets twisted, right?
Yep.
And when we look at it differently, it reminds me of Star Trek, Kobayashi Maru. There's the Kobayashi Maru test, which puts the player into a lose-lose situation, right? And the only way to win in a lose-lose situation is to change the rules. Captain Kirk has taught us a
Absolutely.
lot in our lifetime. That is one of them, right? And so I'm telling people what these problems we're really angry about and the things that we don't see solutions for is because they're currently 2D, but we will have 3D solutions. We will be able to break the rules and we will be able to do it differently. And
Yeah.
then all those other places that were like, honestly, they're going to find solace in our systems. They're going to find like, oh, we can apply that to us. We can get rid of our red tape. And then anyone that doesn't want to, that's like, oh, we love our bureaucracy. All right, devils. like, all right, we don't want to play with you then. Because you're gross. So, anyone that's like, more red tape, I'm just like, ew, you're ruining every party, even the ones you're not at. You're just ruining them.
You're just a party destroyer, and you're not even at the fucking party.
Well, all the hand raisers are the ones making these policies. They're the ones that have all these jobs, and we want to rage against them. Like, of course, like why wouldn't we? But I'm just saying, let's just lean back, look at it. It's not so scary. And it's not unsolvable, and it's not completely broken. Like everyone will I let's use a personal example, right? Like I'm doing a lot of finger pointing, so let's point it at me. Clifford publicly said when Donald Trump became the president of the United States, I publicly griped about that because my son was born 2 weeks after he was announced that he was going to be president. And there was something in my head emotionally at that time that didn't want to raise my kid in a Donald Trump world, right?
Okay.
The thing is I've always been raising my kid in a Donald Trump world. It always has been a Donald Trump world. There's always been Donald Trumps. I was just more buying into the narrative that, oh, if this guy has power, doom and gloom is upon us, right? And we saw that doom and gloom when those people wore those Halloween costumes and climbed stairs. They showed us, right? But like, it's really funny because we're further back. We have hindsight, and we're able to look at it. And I can tell you, like, I wish I could go back and say, Cliff, you don't need to fearmonger here. You don't need to say that just because this guy is president, that only doom and gloom is the thing happening now. Because, like, and listen, a lot of doom and gloom happened. I got divorced during that time. I was homeless during that time. I had my own personal doom and gloom, but the thing is Donald Trump had nothing to do with my doom nor gloom. Right? Like, if anything, I almost see it as he was the first guinea pig in the experiment of comedians in leadership. Now, he's not the best comedian to put in a leadership position, right?
Right.
But he is. I naturally see him as a bit of a comedian because he operates like one. He reads the room like one. Like he very much is. His intuition is very sharp, and so
Right.
like I look at that. I look at like I'm like, oh, now imagine one day you get the Barack Obama of comedians. And then that person becomes, you know what I mean? Like they know how to be a statesman. They know how to speak to people without being divisive, but they also have the comedic intelligence and will to say fuck you where you have to say fuck you, to not give in to group fear, right? Like we see little mistakes, and like Donald Trump's not the first one to make that mistake. Biden's made that mistake too, right? Justin Trudeau has made that mistake. Like the leaders make these mistakes, and this is what I'm saying is the deeper we get into understanding concepts like uh duality, that like catch 22s exist. You know what I mean? That sometimes
Yeah.
you do run into something without an answer, or something with two correct answers that oppose each other. Like that's a
Yep.
thing. Like so, like just like we end up dumbing down people who explain these concepts of being like either too kooky dukes or they're not being tangible enough, right? Like, oh, that's all theory and whatnot. It's like, yeah, but if you give me a chance to put my theory into practice, what happens to that theory? That's literally what we do with theories, right?
Yeah.
So I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm putting my theory into practice with this company. I'm going to build the research team that will do this. I will build the learning and development team that will do this. I will build it. I'm taking complete responsibility. And like I'm I'm so free beyond the point of money, which is actually really cool. I went broke in June and I was like, "Oh, I got to get a booster juice job or something now." Right?
Yeah.
No, I figured it out. I ended up working for my therapist 4 hours a week, helping her with her website and shit. And I'm telling everyone, get so mentally healthy that your therapist pays you. Right?
I love that. Flip
Yeah.
the script on them. Flip the script on
Flip
them.
the script, right? Like, bruh. And so like, but no, that's what I'm saying is like, I just started telling myself, no, there's a way forward. And then 2 weeks ago, even remember, I just told you my demo's not even made yet. 2 weeks ago, I'm like, oh, I'm done. There's no way I'm ever going to be able to do this. No one is ever going to fund this company. No one is ever going to entertain this, yada, yada. Even though I have my demo client already looking at other streams, curious what else they can do and trying to book for 2023. Even though I have all these people reaching out after the Business Insider article, being like, I want to learn more about this, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, well, Clifford, if you have people that are interested in this already, well, what have you not done? Let's just make a list of sales magnets and assets you have not created. It was like 40. Like 40
Yeah.
things that I could do to improve my business. And when I say I'm improving my business, I'm saying I'm improving visibility, improving the ability to speak to the press, right? Like all like improving the product itself, like all that kind of thing, right? And like that's all those things I haven't done yet. So how can I say it's over? How can I say this thing was just a failed business? I
Yeah,
don't.
because a lot of people look at it. They want that immediate growth and that immediate satisfaction and all that stuff. But when you haven't tapped into a lot of those other pieces, then you haven't actually fully given your business the breathing room that it really needs.
Especially if you're building for the long term, right? I want to build for the
Exactly.
long term. I mentioned to you that a big motivator for me even getting a day job on the road was when my status changed to being a father, right?
Yep.
And so like for me, I do want to be able to pass something down to my son. Like I've always believed in the individuality of life. And like I was like that we live our like no matter how much I can explain to you my stories, you just never lived through them. And I never lived
Right.
through yours. Right? I'll never experience what it's like having your clearly superior beard. I will never know, right? But you do, and you get to have that life all the time, right? And so that individual experience is so precious. Like I even like when I was naming my son, I gave him a middle name that could easily be his last name, so he could just disassociate himself from me and from our family. I hate those kind of ties. Like, so his name is Henry Bronson Myers, but he can easily just be Henry Bronson. Sounds like an
Yeah.
author, a street fighter, whatever you want to be, bro. Go be Henry Bronson. You know what I mean?
How
Like,
old is he now?
He's turning 6 on the 27th, and like I'm enamored by him because like he, sometimes he's off sick and sometimes he's facing weird things at school or emotions about the divorce, like all these real things that are making a human. And I'm watching him also being told that he's behind on school things, right? And I find that really interesting because as I'm doing adult education in a corporate training sense, I'm very much paying attention to my son. I'm paying very close attention to how he learns, what he does, and you see where this is where I'm building a business. It's a corner of a room. This is not glamorous. I don't even get a garage like Steve Jobs. That bro got a garage. Like, I don't get a garage. So I'm I'm in a corner, okay? My son, so you see right here I have a desk. You right? Underneath here, I built a fort for him so he could go underneath and work while I'm working. And he'll have his papers and he'll do his drawings and he'll do the things that he wants to learn about on his tablet. And sometimes he'll come out and come and sit by me and ask me what I'm doing. And I'll explain it to him just like the way I explained to you. If you asked me what I was doing. And I'm just yes-anding his own curiosity when he's in those moments with me, right? And that kind of shit, I'm just saying, we do it with weight loss, right? Oh, if I get a gym membership, I'll lose the weight. No, you can just sweat where you are. You can stand up and sweat right now. You go on my Instagram, it's just me posting my workout times, right? Because I want the public accountability that I'm doing this, and you just see me sweating in my living room. Same thing with the business. I'm not waiting for the elements to be correct for me. I'm doing it with what I have.
Exactly.
There's nothing else.
That's crucial.
Well, I think it's hard. How do you teach that? Like, you've done enough. You've done way more businesses than I have. You've been in it way longer than I have, right? Like, how do you teach you work with what you have? Like, just that absolute resourcefulness.
That's honestly, like, I'd say 80 to 90% of the stuff, the content, the stuff from my experience that I'm sharing with people on Twitter, LinkedIn, wherever else it is, my podcast, my newsletter, like wherever those outlets for me are, that's always been my thing because I built my business in my parents' house. I built my other business in a 600 square foot apartment in the middle of Koreatown, LA. Like, I didn't have an office. I never cared to have an office. I just said, I have a laptop and I have an internet connection, and that's all I need. That's absolutely all I need.
It's funny.
That's, I think, crucial for people to understand is like I look at things this way. Anything that you're saying that you don't have that you need in order to start, 90%, 95% of those things are just excuses to never start. They're just excuses
100%.
to simply just say, hey, oh, I don't have the perfect tool. I don't have this. You have a tool and you make that tool work for you however you need it to work.
And this is where I would come in and say we have to recognize the learning curve of the person who doesn't understand that yet, that they can do it where they are, right? Because like a lot of times, you have to unlearn something their family has taught them or their local community has taught them, right? Like. And that's a reward system that they're not used to. They're not used to the idea of that, right? And this is a good example. You just said it, like all you had was your computer. Well, I knew I would need a computer to do this. And so I was looking at like all my expenses and I was like, yo, I'm in the hole. I'm barely scraping by on rent and shit like that. And I have just enough room on my credit card for a computer. And I'm like, do I buy the computer and just go for it, even though it puts me like over the line on my credit card, maybe cause me more problems in the present, right? Or do I
Yep.
wait? And I was like, well, if I wait, I'll probably just spend the same amount of money I would have spent on this, but most likely on burritos and shit.
Right.
Right? Like
Right.
just little purchases would have been the same amount eventually. So I said, fuck it. I'm getting the computer today. I'm going to figure this out tomorrow. Right?
Yep.
And then I just figured out how to put 200 down, how to put this down or whatever. But I said yes to the most important thing that I needed for the business, which was the computer. Like I
Exactly.
could lose my place today, and I could, if I still got this computer, I still got my business.
Exactly. Exactly.
You know, and
That's
like
it. That's it.
and then I can figure it out from there. And so it's almost like I really want to speak more towards like people that are like that have been raised really poor, that really want to do it, and are just like I have absolutely no resources. Like they just feel really, really scarce, you know? Like my message is that's a lie. Like my message is you've been lied to. And that lie will keep you there if you choose to continue believing it. But here's the thing, I've now told
Exactly.
you it's a lie. Right? I told you. So it's up to you now whether or not you're going to buy the bullshit or not buy the bullshit. And some lies are harder than other, right? Like when you're talking about like the blanket response for the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, well, we can look at that as a lie, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a lie because one thing doesn't solve all things.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
so, and like, but people are really uncomfortable if you call it a lie. And here's the
Yep.
thing, I'm not saying people were actively lying. I could actually assume positive intent and think that they were trying to do the best for the most. I could
Mm-hmm.
honestly I'll go and say that. Even if I don't believe it, I'll say it. Right? Because it cost me nothing to say that. You know? But like I look at it though, I'm like, no, it turned out to be a lie. And it turned out to at least be not true. And we have to accept that and work in reality and work with truth and work with what we know now within our means and go, you know, and
Exactly.
like we're just so connected. We can talk to each other, and this conversation is so important because who the fuck knows who's going to find it. It's not about you or me getting clout out of this thing. It's literally someone's going to stumble upon and be like, not only did Clifford not know what the fuck he was doing, but he was so impassioned, so informed. He got up every single day, kept himself accountable, and was fucking going for it. But a guy like Zlatko saw that energy, recognized it, and just wanted to talk and learn from him too. And like, and
That's
that's what
it.
I'm saying is we're both doing the thing. We're just both at different points.
That's it. It's it. And I always and I'll kind of close it out with this. And I always say, this used to be my big thing when I was with all my drinking buddies. I always used to say, I'm not above you, I'm not below you, I'm always right next to you. That was always
Yeah.
my thing.
See, well, it's funny you say that because like something that my ex-wife always says to my son, like, so she's the mother of my child, right? And she always says, "Don't forget, mom's always in your heart." She always says that. She's a
Yeah.
very emotional Italian woman. Mama's in your heart, right?
Yeah.
Where me, I'm like, I got your back. Like I'm like
Yeah.
I'm not. It's a little different, right? I'm like I'm directly behind you. This is where I was
Yeah.
saying as so you with your drinking buddies, you're a peer. Me as a teacher, I'm behind you. I'm behind
Yeah.
you. Listen, you got this, but you're leading the way. But if you fall back, oh, I'm gonna catch you. I got
Right.
you.
Right.
But I'm behind. I
Right.
got your back. A little different, right? But I think the words we say and choose matter, and so I think it's really important to be beside us, and it's important, like when you're in a teacher mode, to be
Yep.
behind. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, man, this was an absolute pleasure. I can't believe it's already been an hour and a half almost. So,
Yeah, like
but no,
I
I
was
really
like, when you were like, yeah, we're wrapping it up here. I'm like, don't we have 4 more hours of this? Like, I can keep going.
we'll have to do another episode. I love it, man. No, thank you for sharing all that, and thank you for sharing all your wisdom, your insight, your journey, and what you've been through. And I think there's a lot to take away from here for people to understand that first and foremost, you don't need all these crazy things to get started. I think you just need a little bit of ambition, a little bit of curiosity, and a whole lot of well, I would say a whole lot of curiosity. Actually, that's probably the
Well, I
biggest
would
piece
say,
for me with everything that
yeah,
that I
you
do.
need to be like, you need to be overly curious, but I would say the thing that has to be 100% is your commitment. You cannot be 99.9. You cannot be 99.9, and if you're in, you're in.
Yep,
And like
exactly.
and then you got to commit to it. I've given myself a 20-year road. So I tell people, if
Yeah.
this thing ain't built by the time I'm 56, someone tap me out, pull me out of the ring.
Right. Absolutely. Well, Cliff,
Thank
thank you
you.
so much, man, for being on here. And I hope that I hope that everything goes well with your company. I love what you're doing. I love how you're reframing things, and I'm rooting for you, man. As always, I'm rooting for you, brother.
I appreciate that, dude. And let me know how I can pass this around too. I want other people to hear this conversation. I think it's important for anyone building to hear it. So
Absolutely.
I really appreciate you giving me the time to just talk about it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Anytime, brother.
All
Cheers.
right.
Well, you made it to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for tuning into What is My Brain podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got some value out of it. Make sure you hit the subscribe button or the follow button to get notified when new episodes are live. I'm out. Thank you.